Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Conscious Creators Community Show, episode 4. This week, we're going to be talking about closure. So, do we need to get, where do we need to get closure? What is closure? If we don't get closure, what happens to us? And, if we do get closure, what happens to us? I think closure is quite an important concept in life, and maybe not enough people understand where they need to get it. So, it's enough from me. I'm your host. I'm Matt Love. You can find me here on Facebook or on my website, mattlove.business. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and I'm going to ask a question. So what is closure to you, or what is closure? John, you're my first guest on the left. You're muted, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm John in Riga, Latvia, and very glad to be here with everybody. It's a fascinating subject. I think it's used too much and explained too little, so I'm very glad to be a part of this conversation. I mean, I've had many different careers and married 3 times, and so I know a little bit about closure, as I'm sure everybody else here does, but I kind of see it as more of a transition. The word closure for me is a little bit hard, and I'll talk a little more about that later. But I think of it as something that we, sort of a metamorphosis rather than a real movement away. So just as an introductory idea, that's what I would say.
I like that a lot. Metamorphosis, brilliant. So, Sil, you're next on my screen.
Wonderful. Transition is a very powerful word. I don't much care for this word closure because, well, a bottle cap is a closure technically in industry. And when you put a closure on something, you lock it up, you bottle it up. So sometimes when people get closure, they are looking to basically snip off the ends of things, lock it up, tie it down tight. But of course, there's not resolution. And that's my term for closure, is to get resolution, which doesn't mean solution necessarily. I think I mentioned this in our thing last week, that if I'm, say, a detective, I can be resolved on a case, even though the case isn't solved. It becomes a cold case. I've done everything I can, nothing more I can do. I'm resolved. I can move on. I'm at peace. And there lies the issue with closure or resolution, to be at peace and you can move, right? You've got nothing unresolved.
Okay. Nice. I like that a lot. And Anastasia?
Well, in my mind, closure's got 2 meanings. One is the one that Sil mentioned, which I sort of relate to relationships, or whether they be personal relationships or with business relationships. And that is when there is emotional connection, you need a resolution to say, right, I've done everything I could and it's done. The other kind of closure I've come across, and I find that it's really important to have, is when you've got too many things on the go, too many things on your mind, or too many chapters in your life, and areas that we put our focus on is to, when something is kind of finished or we want to take our attention away, is to make that decision and be aware of it and come away. So it's kind of a taking focus away from, and make that decision that for the time being is final, to be able to open up and make the headspace to open up other things for us to concentrate on. Because I think our capacity for what we can hold in our attention is finite, and therefore by having closure in some areas, we make the room in others.
I like that a lot. Thank you. Agni, you're next on my screen.
All right. Closure is an interesting word that I don't really use much. For me, from quantum healing perspective, I talk a lot about processing. So it's like finalizing that processing through your system, whether it is like unprocessed emotions, experiences, memories, something that needs to be released and let go. So when this happens, then there are no blockages, there are no limits, and energy can flow freely. So that is a closure for me, probably. I would say.
Brilliant. I like it a lot as well. Gabe, you're next here.
Yes, hello everybody. Gabriel with Stress Relief for Teachers, or everybody in the world. So, closure is something that when I speak with my clients, I refer it based on two things. One is a resolution of sorts, an emotional resolution where we get to release that particular thing that stymies us. And we have closure. There is a release, an energetic release there. And evolution. So we resolve and evolve. Just because we resolve doesn't mean we have to stay at the zero wall of nothing, because that's where we can have recurrences in our lives. So the evolution part of that is evolving energetically, emotionally, energetically onto a healing event, that includes everything from gratitude all the way up to bliss, and I think that's very important, resolve and evolve oneself with their closure.
Yeah, nice. Resolve and evolve. Really nice. I like that as well. Joey.
Who's Joey?
There I go.
Joanne, sorry. But
I am Joanne Costa, Joey Costa of Presence Manifest, coming to you today from New Mexico. And closure is a term also I don't tend to use very much because of the sort of accepted definition of, this finite, ending when it comes to things in our life. But closure is what I do best. So, but in my line of work, what I see closure as is the end, right? Like when you're reading a story and you get to the end of the story and it says the end, right? So closure for me is the end of a story, the end of an experience, the end of a habitual tendency, right? It's really just the intentional decision to say something is complete, right? So that you can start a new experience of it, or have a new relationship with it, or have a new understanding of it, or connect with it in a different way. It's just saying, I'm good with this up till now, and I'm ready for something new. So closure for me is the beginning of possibility, I'd say.
Oh, very nice. I like that a lot. Cher, you're next.
Hi, I think I'm on. Okay, I'm Cher. I'm coming from the Gulf in Texas. Nice to be here. I really completely resonated with what Joanne just said, because it clicked as soon as she said it's the end. For me, it's the beginning. It's seeking a deliberate, conscious choice to do something a little bit different so that you can bring, I love what everybody said so far, transition and closing, but you're seeking a deliberate ending with the intention of clearing it up, with resolving, with bringing some kind of peace to yourself or to a situation so that you can move forward. For me, that's something that I practice daily. It's unbinding constantly. I'm always looking to unbind from what was to what can be or what will be. That's where I am.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. And I love that a lot. Yeah. Anna, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, hello, my name is Anna. I'm an artist and a mentor. Call myself a visual story activator. I combine mindfulness and creativity to help people empower themselves. So with that perspective, closure to me has a lot to do with what story we choose to tell. I have a hard time letting go of relationships. So if there are relationships that end or are problematic, and there is no way to, for instance, with people that have passed on and you never really got to resolve that relationship, I like to revisit the story and rewrite it, revision it, Because I am a visual person, to me, story is very visual. I have to use my imagination then to kind of go back in time and redo it in my mind in a way that gives closure, that gives an ending, or a suitable re-beginning of that story. I don't think there is ever full closure on anything. We carry the memories of things that we've done and people that we've known, but to rewrite that story about that event or that person from a perspective that feels good to you, that feels complete, and that allows you to then continue your own story from there. That's what I think when I think about closure. It's revisioning some story, rewriting it your own way.
I like that a lot. Yeah, definitely. And Jason, you're next on my screen.
Well, I'm Jason. Transformational coaching is what I'm doing, really. So I never really thought of it as closure. I'm processing, yes, resolution, definitely. The energy that I've been stuffing into my body for many, many years, I'd never had resolution to anything in my life. So when I looked at rebuilding the relationship with myself, I looked at rebuilding those relationships with everything else that had happened also. So the people I'd lost through death, but the people that I'd lost, like relationships, the business, my business partners, and I made peace with it all. Yeah, so I'm quite comfortable with it. So in some instances, I've been fortunate enough to talk to some of the people. And I've said things like, do you know, it wasn't all about you. And that was enough for me. Yeah. And to another one, I kind of said, are you okay? Because I know she's not been very good. And in my way, that's kind of saying, do you know, I did care, but I couldn't care. Yeah.
Yeah.
That made me feel good then, because I was like, well, you know, because it was all wrong. I didn't know what I was doing. So it's a mixture of everything you guys are saying, really. But I look at it in terms of relationships. And another guy, the guy with rugby, I shook his hand. I asked him, were you happy when you told me that thing about rugby? And he kind of said, well, why would you think that? I said, because I thought you did, and I hated you for it. And we had a chat, and I shook his hand. We shook hands. And I haven't seen him since, right? And that's enough. But if there's other things that I haven't had that opportunity to address, and I'm quite happy with it, because I understand there's nothing I can do about that. So it's just this whole thing of being at peace. I resolve what I can. If I can't, I just put it to bed and say, there's nothing I can do about it. Move on, because it's helped me grow. And it's that whole experience of, it's aided me. I like to think that it'll help other people now. And another friend said, as you are healing, other people are healing, because I apologized to her for what I did to her. I didn't act very well at all. And so I remember that experience vividly. And she said, thank you. And that's enough. If you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. At some point, you've just got to say, okay, move forward.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. Brilliant. So, Priscilla, you're next on my screen.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. Sorry I was a little bit late. As well as being a cellular health coach, I'm also a caregiver, and I was needed right there at the top of the hour. So, yeah, for me, gosh, I was thinking about what Jason said. It really is about constantly moving forward. We're always in process. I think even coming to closure, things like we say, things aren't always completely finished. But if we've made a decision that, for example, we can't stay in that space right now, we can't help that person right now, we need to hold space for ourselves for whatever is going on. And for me, I feel like I made a choice not to revisit, not to retell the story of trauma, to look at it again. It comes back to perspective, right? This is part of my story, but I don't have to live in that story. And I'm always moving forward. I'm always learning. I'm always attracting new things, new people, new ideas. And it really starts with that belief that we can move from, to connect with last week with trauma, is that, we're moving forward through that, and that our story, is part of the process. It is part of the sharing that we do with other people, right?
Yeah.
And not to
Absolutely.
stay in it so that it's, I don't drudge up my story. And last week I didn't say anything, but then I realized after we were done, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had a lot of trauma. I just don't stay in that trauma, right? I know it's there. I know it occurred to me. It was things that happened. But for me, I almost feel like those things that happened to me allowed me to look at myself a little bit more closely, to realize my part in the situation, right? And then not to repeat it, because we do patterns, and until we disrupt those patterns, until we really look at our life as a whole and as we're supposed to evolve. I love that, resolve and evolve, Gabe. That was beautiful. And it is the beginning of possibility. It's the beginning of the next thing that we get to learn. So I really like, there is some closure, but not complete closure, because we are always evolving. We're always developing. And sometimes we have to pull that story back up and tell that story and how we got past the trauma of that story, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I love that a lot, actually. I mean, one of the things I like you said is we have to find the belief that we can. And actually, that's one of the things that came to me this morning. I was listening to Cat Stevens this morning, Father and Son, and there's this one lyric in there that says, since the moment I was born, I was ordered to listen. Yeah. And this made me realize that this is one of those things that holds people back from getting closure, is that they don't believe they can, because they've just been told to listen from the moment they were born, rather than actually choose for themselves. So anyway, just related to what you were saying, that came to me this morning. Renee, are you able to? Yeah, brilliant. So if you want to introduce yourself and share your thoughts on closure.
Yes, I first related a lot to what Joanne was saying, and then what came up, which I just want to add, is the fact that to me, it's also the moment you cease to resist what is, so that you can move through what is. It's almost like an infinity sign. You move through what is and then transcend into the next. Then you have learned the lesson, and then you learn to not resist the next cycle.
I like that. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to add my little bit. So I really find that closure is ending energetic experiences, or attachment to energetic experiences. And there's a lot of things we need to close. There's lots of loops that we open in life that we don't close, and they can be as small as just saying, I'm going to do this and not doing it. And we can open an attachment, and we need to close all these attachments that we make, all these, and it's either way. It's either by finding resolution or actually taking action and doing it. So that was closure can be linked to so many things. It's sometimes unaware, and I do agree it's not closure, it's more embodiment. However, most people would call separating something closure. So I just want to say hi to everyone that's here. It's great to see you all here. We've got some questions popping in. So Sil, did you want to add something?
I did. If we go a little deeper into closure, particularly when we start looking at it as transition and as resolution, we also see that a major, big, profound part of closure is reconnecting, reprocessing, reassociating, relabeling, redefining. Like Priscilla said, she still has the trauma, but she's looking at it differently. In other words, she's got a reconnection, a different connection to trauma than she had before, a different association with it, right? A different labeling of it, a different definition of it. Now, when you make resolution, when you come to closure, you find that the thing that you are closing about, whether it be trauma, relationship, death, whatever, it now has some sort of value to you rather than being stressful, right? It's become something that's okay in your life, that you're at peace with, that you're at ease with. It's no longer stressful. It's been shifted. There's a reconnection to it from a different perspective, a different understanding. And that is critical, because we can't forget our ex, no matter how much you would try. But instead of breaking up and trying to ignore them and take them out of your mind, if you transition them from, a partner to, well, they're an ex now. It's a transition. You can transition to be a friend or whatever. So this is very key to make these new associations, these new connections. Yes?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, Anna, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I was thinking about circumstances where people go through events that never really get to be resolved. I'm thinking of people who have had loved ones disappear or murdered, and how hard it is for them to resolve that absence. There's a lot of, whenever I read stories about some parent whose child was kidnapped or murdered, and they feel they need to have revenge to feel closure. That's not always possible. I've had events in my life that relate to that. My older brother was murdered. I wasn't there. I never got to understand what happened. I never got to go to his funeral. And I've lived with that guilt all my life. I also lost a child. And, there was a part of me for a long time that had that longing in my heart to see them again, to ask them questions, to find out what happened. How did you feel? How do you feel now? And it took me a long time to realize that I would never get that. I would never get that. And I had to resolve that in my spirit, in my heart, for myself, because you need to move on. You need to continue your story. If you get stuck in that chapter of your story, it's very difficult to evolve and to become, the better person that you want to be. So what I've used the power of imagination. You can do that. You can use visualization to go back and actually have a conversation. You can do that. You can do that through creative work. And it's what happens then is you then get the chance to either put a comma or a period in that chapter and continue that story. For me, it's always about story. And I think for most people, humans need to have a story that has a beginning, middle, and end and continues. It's like a dance. You are dancing, with the people that came before you, and you are dancing with the people that are still coming. And same for you. You're dancing with yourself as you were, and with the person that you are becoming. And you do it in the moment, and you do it with your creativity and imagination, at least from my experience and my perspective.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough one. And Cher, did you want to add something to that? You're muted at the moment.
There we go. Yeah, did. Understanding keeps coming to mind. Making sense keeps coming to mind for this whole thing, for what closure is for me. I always seek to understand, and I was just covering this morning. For me, when I don't have, I have to set an intent to understand, for things to make sense. And I hope that I'm making sense even right now, but when I don't want to seek to understand why, like why my father did what he did, why my why I was abandoned, why any of that. So long as I was asking why all the time, I was not getting any closure. I was filled with resentment, with hate, with just all the time. But then when I stopped asking the why and started seeking the understanding and just trying to make sense of, everybody keeps using the word story, trying to make sense of my story, things just started coming back together. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm cool with that. Now I can move on. And that's just kind of where I've been. And so, you know, when I think of closure, I don't really think of closure. I think technically I always think of, I need to understand. I just need to understand. That's all. And once I do understand, I'm good.
Thank you. That was, yeah, really, really important. And making sense of things. I do like that a lot, actually. Yeah, understanding. Agni, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I wanted to maybe respond to Anna's reflection of story ideas. When you say that when people pass away, it's no longer possible to resolve that. From quantum healing perspective, again, I'm talking from that space, everything is energy, everything is presence. There is no, time does not exist except as a concept in our heads. So really you can connect through spirit to anybody, whether they are alive or not, and resolve those things. And there are quite simple processes to do that. And if somebody lost their loved one, just having that soul-to-soul conversation, understanding, having the information coming both ways, helps to really clear and release those emotions. And like integrate the grieving process can happen fast. It doesn't have to take very long time when you really have tools.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can really relate to what you're saying. I haven't had, fortunately for me, I haven't had a lot of people pass away in that I'm close to, but the people that have, at first I would ignore it. And then I would try and resolve it. But then I started to realize there are certain things I can't change. And what would that person want for me? You know, other than to release and carry on. And what I tend to do is the grieving, because it's natural to miss somebody, and to just think through and make sense of everything. And I think with that, what Anna was saying, that's quite hard though, when it's unexpected. And you know, and I think also what happens there is the shock of how do these things happen in this world as well, you know, especially when somebody's murdered, for example. I mean, you know, there's this shock that goes with it as well. That's it's like, hold on, how do these things happen as well? And how it happened to my brother. You know, you hear about these things on the TV, and more than you hear about them in reality, I hope. So did you want to add anything else, Agni?
No, I agree. Like there is a trauma, but again, it depends at what mindset you see that, what level. For me, I had also like a couple of big experiences of loss, but I didn't even need to grieve because I can continuously communicate with those people in the spirit realm. So it's just a different kind of experience.
Yeah, it's a really good. I mean, you know, different people have different skill sets and abilities, and we can all learn different ones. So, okay, John's next, and then Renee, I'll get to you. There's a couple of people, but I will ask you in a second. John, yeah.
Yeah, well, to riff a little bit on the very important idea of storytelling, you know, we don't have to really tell the stories on our own. For example, my first wife passed away, and since then, you know, I will often have conversations with her. She's still with me, you know, and however you want to understand that. But and so, you know, it's possible to have conversations and to kind of create the storytelling insights with the other person. You know, let's say it's somebody you were very angry with and you're trying to forgive, or, you know, whatever it is, somebody who betrayed you, or anything positive. And so we can really tell those stories together with people in our own spirits. And I think that that's very, very healthy, because then it pulls us a little bit more out of ourselves and a little bit more into the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Joey?
I wanted to just sum up something that seems to be a common theme for the people watching, is that a lot of our journeys before we became conscious of being sort of the authors and the creators of our life, closure was a different meaning before that, because it seemed to have to do with other people, right? Like when I was a teenager, it was like, oh, we had this breakup, so now we have to go out and have this conversation where it has to wrap up all nicely. And then, you know, it's like we were seeking these like closure when we were younger, or closure when we're unaware, is like we just want copacetic, right? We want the high, or the high emotion, to sort of reach some sort of settlement. It's like a settlement instead of like an actual ending or beginning. And then as we grow and as we become conscious of the fact that we create our reality and we go through our own journeys, it's like we find out that the truth is closure is an inside job, right? It's like us closing our experiences, us making decisions to move on, us making the resolution that we need to find peace. It's really an inner thing, right? And it's not dependent on somebody else saying sorry to you, somebody else understanding your opinion, somebody else, you know, understanding your side of something. You know, it has nothing to do with these external things. It's really just a nice way to create peace for ourselves. And when we take closure on as our own responsibility, or ending or beginning, or however you want to see it, resolution as our own responsibility, we are able to move on quicker and create way more stuff in our lives, because we don't get stuck in this waiting for somebody else to give us something so we can move on.
Yeah. Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Awesome. So yeah, really good share there. Anna, you wanted to, hold on, Renee was next, and then Anna, you're after that, because Renee can't get her hand up because she's on a phone. Renee.
Yeah. Joanne, it feels like you're in my mind every time you speak, just before me, because you touch on everything I wanted to say. So what I was thinking is, and I'm just a very short share, is about 18 months ago, I had the courage to walk out an extremely narcissistic marriage. And I know a lot of people really struggle to find closure and move on. What really helped for me is to understand the other person, where he's coming from, his story. And then in that understanding, you are able to make peace. And then also, if that is what you need to do, forgiveness for that person, and forgiveness for yourself, because you obviously also played a role and you made a decision to marry that person. So it's the whole thing about understanding, not only for yourself, but also understanding on behalf of for somebody else.
Yeah, really. And I think that's the first time we've really had somebody say forgiveness. And I think, yeah, you know, either forgiving yourself or forgiving other people is crucial to getting closure, so you can open up new experiences, because as we've said, it's not really about complete closure, it's actually about opening up new doors in our lives. Anna, you're next on my line of people.
Yes, I wanted to piggyback on what you said about asking what they want. It doesn't really matter what the method is. You know, Agni speaks of, you know, connecting energetically, spiritually. It doesn't really matter. As long as there is some kind of process of ritual that you follow. So what happens a lot of times when we don't find closure is because we are still in regret, and we're still feeling guilty. And that comes from having a feeling that there was nothing you could have done, or there's nothing you can do now. You feel powerless to change that and to complete it. So either you do it energetically or creatively, it doesn't matter, as long as you do some kind of imagination or visualization of what that event was. And yes, you have to use compassion, and you have to ask that other person or that event, what was it that, or what is it that it needs from you to feel complete? And if you do that within yourself, with your own mind, with your own heart, an answer comes. An answer comes, and it's always very, at least for me, very surprising how simple it is. For instance, with my brother, the answer I got was that all he wanted was to go back to his mama. He wanted my permission to leave me and go back to our mother, because this figure in my life was like my knight in shining armor. He was my older brother, my protector. So when he left my life, I was like, what happened? Where did you go? What did I do? What could I have done? And now as an adult, to be able to go back in my mind, in my heart, and ask the question, what do you need, brother? And get that answer, that gave me closure. And absolutely, it has to do with compassion, with forgiveness. I felt forgiveness for myself for not being able to help him at the moment. I gave him forgiveness for not being there for all those years in my growing up. You know, he was supposed to be there all that time. It's like, I forgive you. I let you go. I let you go to where you need to go, or to get what you need to get energetically in our imagination. And it's a wonderful, wonderful process, but you have to follow some kind of ritualized process. With Joey, for instance, Joey's process is very ritualistic. I have it on my refrigerator. I have that process, and it works. It's beautiful, because it gives you a way to work things out that is outside of logic, that is outside of thinking. It's an imagination process.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna. Yeah. Gabe, did you want to add something?
Yeah, a lot.
Good for you.
There's so much that we can talk about here, but you know what keeps resonating in my mind again about closure is this. You know, I lost my first child at the age of 17, not understanding why this is happening. All I know is that that's traumatic, especially at the age of 17. And I carried that mixed bag of downregulated emotions, everything from guilt to shame to, you know, whatever you want to feel that's just bad for you. For 17 years after that, I was 35 and I still didn't understand what the hell's going on, but I miss my son. And it's devastating to me. I don't know what's going on, but I learned to bury that. I didn't resolve it. I buried it. Now, move fast forward to now, you know, the last 5 years of my life, I've been going through my own, you know, journey of resolving and evolving energetically. And what I love about that is that I learned that all that mental rehearsal that I was doing for 17 years, okay, caused me more pain than necessary, simply because I was not learning how to resolve the energetic emotion behind it. Once I resolved the emotion that's attached to the trauma, I started to feel more compassion for my loss. Okay, I honor, you know, that memory in my life. It's not devastating to me because I chose to shift energetically. And I had to walk my own timeline, energetic timeline, to the time I was 17 and do all that inner work, because my energetic state of as a 17-year-old was just stymied in the unified field. It wasn't going anywhere. It was stymieing my adult life. So being able to go back, okay, and doing the energy work, because that's what we are. Since we are energy beings, a lot of the trauma that we experience in life gets stuck in that timeline. And we must be able to address that as our own observers and be able to release ourselves or exonerate ourselves energetically through compassion, through love, through trust, through the excitement, through the joy of like, wow, you know, why did it take me so long to want to shift? It's such a beautiful thing to take yourself back out of that or exonerate yourself from that guilt, that shame. Bring yourself back out energetically through your heart to the unified field, and then start a healing event that now lasts forever. It's an eternal thing at this point. I still honor my loss, but I don't suffer from it because I resolve the emotion. The trauma itself, I can never change, but I can certainly honor that. And I certainly do that a lot. Sil looks excited. He's like, talk to me.
That's huge, 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 huge.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
So thank you for my 2 minutes of fame.
You're welcome, Gabe, and thank you for such a great 2 minutes. Jason, you're next.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was too busy fighting to give myself the space to think about things. And if I wasn't fighting people, I was drinking. So I was always too wrapped up in my little mind and world to ever slow down enough to actually not think about what had happened. But it's only after I had compassion for myself, a bit of love for myself, and I'd slowed my brain down, got into these flow states, that I did understand and resolve these things, which brought me to a place where I could actually address what had happened with other people. It wasn't about me, it was about them. But if I hadn't resolved it to a point where I was very comfortable with what had happened, I would never have been able to speak to them about it when I met them at parties and things. But it was not about me. It was always about, because I understand there's issues with them also.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming from a place of love, if you like, but without an attachment to what I'm saying, meaning to do anything with it, if you know what I mean. It's just saying it.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I mean, it is acceptance of it and just
and then hopefully they'll get what I'm saying out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if they
take a positive from what I'm saying, you know,
even if they don't, it's in the open. It's in the open, and that's always a nice thing when it gets out in the open.
Yeah, and the results have actually been favourable because I was in a place where it was authentic. It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't me trying to be clever. It was just like, this is how I feel. I'm sorry, that's how I felt. Because I didn't know how I felt whilst it was happening.
Yeah, I think that's.
I wouldn't allow myself to feel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, really valuable share. Did you want to add something? Oh, you're muted. I don't know if you.
Yeah. It always takes me just a second because I'm on my phone. 2 things. And I'm going to try and sum them up and keep them as short as possible because they are deep, deep points. First off, as a survivor, my trying to seek closure, I didn't really understand what it was I was doing to myself. I was afraid to pursue any type of closure for practically all my life, for 58, 59 some odd years. Why? Well, I was afraid to pursue it because that was my identity. My trauma, my abuse, my story was my identity. And if I let that go, who was I going to be? I had no idea. And I was terrified to let it go. So what I found in some of my coaching clients is they have that same mindset of, I am terrified to let my spouse go, my story go, my abuse go, my childhood go. If I let it go, who am I then? Well, who we are is who we allow ourselves to be, who we choose ourselves to be. We can create. I love this theme of story, because we can create whoever the heck we want to be. We can be. We don't have to be who we were as a kid. We can be whoever we want to be. That to me is the beauty of being able to understand and accept that we do intentionally resist closure in many ways, But then once we step up to the plate and we see that there's nothing to be afraid of, and instead there's nothing but things to embrace and develop and grow, I feel like the rest just kind of falls into place. And that can create some contention, especially when it comes to forgiving and having compassion and understanding for your abuser, for your rapist, for your child molester, for any of those people. It takes a lot to be able to have an understanding of the people who hurt us the most. But once we can do that, I feel like we have found it then.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
that's
Yeah,
where
I
am.
mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's like I was talking to Gabe about emotional energy. We kind of get addicted to feeling a certain way as well, and so we don't know anything other than that, and so we end up, you know, needing that feeling. And especially when things happen to us when we're younger, we start to see ourselves a lot as that person. I mean, my experience is just my dad leaving me, but you know, I only got closure truthfully when I went through and really thought about why he would have been that way. And you know, and when I realized, like, looked at his life and realized I was able to see, this experience left him feeling like that, now he's repeating that experience, you know, and things like that. Sil, do you want to add something?
Yeah, please. So when we get when we get inside non-closure, the non-closure state, to understand closure, and we look at what's going on with us when we are not closed. I don't have closure, and that's why I don't care for the word, because it's not closed. But at that point, before closure comes, we're in a space where we are typically refusing to accept something, refusing to acknowledge something, refusing to admit something. And that something is typically some kind of an awful truth, right? Somebody's died. I don't want it to happen. I don't want him to be dead. I've broken up with my hot girlfriend. I don't want to be. So we don't want to admit or acknowledge or accept a change in reality. And when we see closure as this, making peace with reality, facing and dealing with the awful truth is that they're not with you anymore. You've got to change your relationship, change your connections, change your understanding. And then to follow on, to add to this, what Sher was saying, when you look at this, when you have something and you are dealing with it, we don't know where to go because we've got a self-conception that is tied to our trauma. I'm a victim, I'm being abused, I'm this, I'm that. And when you now want to get closure, if you don't have a replacement, very key replacement self-conception, then you are going to struggle to move on because you don't have a way of dealing with and relating with the new reality that you've now accepted. And that's a key for closure, to not only have this deep acceptance of what you didn't want to accept, but also to change your self-conception with a replacement self-conception. Very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's one of the things that really, when you can't change something, there's only one thing you can do, is change your perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. You know, if you can't change something, you can only change your perspective. Anna, did you want to add something?
Yes, exactly on that. What comes to mind, I don't know if all of you know who Mr. Rogers was. If you have children, you know who Mr. Rogers was. Yes. And one of the things he said was, when things don't make sense, you know, when there's a catastrophe, something that's totally out of our control and it doesn't make sense, he says, look to the helpers. For me, what that means is, when things don't make sense, you want to become present. You want to come back to where you are in the moment and look to the helpers. Who are the helpers? Everything and everyone that's around you in the moment that's working, that makes sense. Using appreciation for what is. I used to tell my kids when they would get really upset and, you know, they would start going crazy because this person, you know, they couldn't get past of what was past. I would ask them, look, think about it. Are you dying right now? No. Are you hurting right now? No. Are you safe right now? Yes. So becoming present and seeing what is good and what is working right now, because you're never going to get back what happened. You know, the house is gone.
Mhm.
The person has died. That's never going to come back.
Yep.
But what is right now is. And that's what I think is the helpers. The helpers are everything that's working right now. And that includes the people around you that are supporting you, that are loving you, that are present. That's it.
So, John, you wanted to add something, and then I've got a question I want to ask afterwards.
Okay, just very quickly, I feel that if we say, well, what have I learned from this? You know, what is the lesson? How is this enriching me? How is it pointing me towards another part of myself or a way that I could grow? I think that this, by saying what is the lesson, in a sense, creates a sense of closure on its own. That just by trying to learn what I have learned from that is a very good way to process it and then to move on.
Yeah, what can I learn from that? Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah.
What must I learn?
Must I learn? Even better, yes. So the question I want to ask, because we're on the hour now, but I'm not in any rush, is what about, so it's relating to a question we've got here in the comments, how can we find closure from medical mistakes that have caused problems for people? So how do we find closure on things that are still affecting us today and even affecting us physically or mentally? How do we start anyway? That would be my question to anyone.
I have a practical technique that we can use to get closure, and it would apply to any situation like this medical technique situation. I mean, the medical problem situation would certainly apply, and that is to imagine that today is the start of a new life. Right? The reincarnation computer downloaded you into this time and space now, and it backfilled all your memories. And it says, this is the reality you've come into. This is your new life starting today. And so how would you relate in terms of your attitude, your psychology, your moods, in the fact that, well, in your story, somebody died. There was this awful accident. There was this unfairness. There was this terrible tragedy. If you're starting a life with those factors already in your life as present, how would you relate to them? That's a really, really powerful way to get closure. Because if you come into a situation like that, you have a completely different attitude to it, attitude towards it, as opposed to when it's something in your past that's an unfair thing, that's unjust, that you didn't want, that you refuse to accept, etc. This is now your new life. It's just part of it. It is. And this is where closure is. It's that acceptance of it being this way now. And that key point that Anna said about now, live in the now. And when you accept the now as it is, then you have closure. Yes?
I like that a lot. Gabe, did you want to add something? Yeah, really, really.
Yeah. You know, I love the sciences behind everything that we do, because neurosciences and biochemical sciences pretty much encompass just about everything that has to do with trauma. You know, and for me, having a clear intention plus having that elevated emotion, or practicing that more on a daily basis, as if, you know, we're already experiencing that, like Sil says, in the present moment, that starts a healing event every single time. It raises our vibrations. It allows us to, again, sustain ourselves and focus our energies where we need to be in the present moment. Every time we have a thought and an emotion that correlates to a past event, we're just, again, we're not allowing ourselves to grow. We're just stuck in the past. So why not, heal in the present? Because that's really where we do heal, right here, right now, not tomorrow and not yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I love that. Not tomorrow, not yesterday. We can only do anything in the present. Jason.
Well, I can't speak about a medical procedure, but obviously after that near-death experience, so I had esophageal varices, stomach varices, an acute duodenal ulcer, portal hypertension, and cirrhosis. plus potential brain damage. And I went out and with the intention of becoming fit and healthy, even when the specialist told me because of the damage to my liver, I wouldn't be able to metabolize enough protein. So I'd never regain my muscle mass that I'd lost because I had little to no muscle mass. So I went out and started walking, then started training, lifting weights, then started cycling, started living a life of a fit and healthy person, nutrition, sleep, hydration. And then when I went to the doctor, so I got myself fit and healthy, went to see the doctor in 2018, and he tells me everything's healed. And they can't tell me how. So I've had many gastroscopies. I've had many liver scans. Okay, the cirrhosis, they say, is still there. Everything else is healed, and they don't know how. They can't tell me how. But it was just the intention to be, and I laughed and I joked and I lived in fresh air, in nature. I did all the nice things, the things that I'd neglected for so many years. I let go of the anger, the hate, the guilt, the shame of the losses in my life. I'd come to terms with all of that, and my body healed.
Yeah, and I think, I can see
Gabe
signaling.
There's no other way it could have, because I mean, I learned about the neurology, the neurobiology and neuroscience of it all, because nobody could understand it. So I told the doctors in the end, because he said, he had me to sign a piece. He said, can you sign this piece of paper? Because last time your esophagus and your stomach were perfect. So he said, this time, if we find any varices, we'd like to tie them. So he did another examination and said, no, it's perfect. I don't understand. So I said, autonomic nervous system, homeostasis, balance, and all these. And all the nurses just stopped dead and looking at me. So, well, you couldn't tell me. I said, so I had to find out. And it goes against everything they're taught.
Yeah, and I think
it's the only answer. So it's not remaining in that place. I'm unwell. I'm never going to get better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the mindset shift.
But the important thing, again, was this. I just went out and did it, and I didn't attach to the outcome. So there wouldn't have been any disappointment if I couldn't have been on the top of Mont Ventoux within 2 years of not being able to walk. Because I didn't anticipate that. I just did it.
Yeah.
And that's being present. That's just going with it.
Yeah, I think there is so much proof now of how positive emotions and positive energy can really heal the body. And it's about deciding whether you can make that shift. It's about not whether, how you're going to make that shift. Because what other choices do you have? You can either hold yourself in the place where you are right now, or you can try something new and go, right, that's what I'm going to do.
Epigenetics says you'll just make yourself ill. And we've always accepted that person is a hypochondriac. They're always ill. Then you mention the word epigenetics and everyone says, you're talking rubbish. You talk energy, you talk perception of the environment, and people say, oh, go away. There's something wrong with you. You're like, well, hang on a minute. No, it's not. That's exactly how it works, isn't it? It's the environment. And the environment's what's happening in here.
Yeah, so I think what's really important is the belief, to start with the belief. So you've got to have the belief that you can heal yourself through positive energy, the belief that you can let go, the belief that you can forgive the person. And that is going to be the start of the journey for you.
If you don't believe it, it stops at the brainstem.
Yeah.
So the body doesn't get told about it.
Interesting. Yeah. So in other words, so you have to have the belief for it to pass from the brain. So,
and you've got to move the energy.
Right. Yeah.
In the body.
Actually creating new beliefs and saying, I'm going to do this. What other option do I have? Changed so many things in my life.
And go out and take action. Do something to elevate. If you can't elevate your emotions just by elevating them, do something which gives you that experience.
Oh, yeah. Good. So,
that becomes a habit.
Even sunshine produces serotonin, so so instead of melatonin, if you're always in unnatural light and inside the house, you don't produce very much serotonin. Joey, you were next there. I can't get you.
I totally got just wrapped up in Jason and forgot everything that I wanted to say before anyway, but I can always add to the conversation of presence and new beginnings. How would you deal with something that is sort of a constant? Is what comes to mind is before we were recording, people were saying, oh, closure, sometimes people think it's all about relationships and not about these other things. But when you really bring it down, an experience of anything is you relating to your environment. So it actually is all about relationships. And so my answer to that would be, you know, by consciously ending your yesterday every day, which is kind of part of my practice, you're starting a new relationship with today, right? So that's how you would begin the journey of changing the situation or finding the forgiveness or understanding the compassion, is by creating a new relationship each day with, you know, with the state that you're in. Because in a new relationship, you're open to be surprised. You know, you're open to new information. When you have an old relationship with your injury or your medical problem or a person who did something wrong, you have a cumulative built up relationship of that. And in that way of relating, in a cumulative way of relating, things get soupy and habitual and not very productive. But in an intimate, clear way of relating, you find answers, right? You find possibilities, you find the energy, you free up the energy to go do something different. And then that changes your path. So I would say that would be my answer.
Really
you know?
love what you just said. Yeah. And I think it's really important to start today or tomorrow when you wake up, if it's the evening for you, as a new day, and put everything behind you. So quickly, Priscilla.
Yes, I mean, quickly, I love this because it comes back to what I teach, which are the laws of mental and emotional health. And that first law is belief that you can do it, you know, and attitude goes along with belief. To the person who has experienced a trauma with medical malpractice, this is, you know, it comes back to this. Today is the beginning of a new journey, like Sil said, right? You have a new life now, and your story is going to impact other people's lives, because I'm sorry, but you won't be the last one who has this experience. It opens you up to new learning, which is the second law of mental and emotional health. You're learning new things. You're learning how to live in a new way. You're learning that you have to look at your life in a different way, in a more positive way, and know, like I said before, that the answers will come into you. You know, that, you know, and for a lot of these people who are experiencing medical malpractice, it also opens up to the learning, to the choice that you're going to do something differently, right? Put your life in balance, and you have to take action. So, you know, I believe that, like Jason said too, the body can heal itself if we give it the right tools. If we take out the things that are hurting us, if we change our mindset, you can make it through, right? And your story is going to touch other lives. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to love and to serve each other.
Yes.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jason, you had something else to add?
Yeah, as soon as we're talking about energy, so I'd been investing for so many years, so much energy into anger, depression, anxiety, stress. And I was chronically stressed for years. And then when I was in the hospital bed, I had this vision of being this guy, but I was going back to work. I was going to take over the business, right? I was going to teach these guys that have been doing all this stuff to me a lesson, yeah? But the way I explain it is I took all that energy that I was using in a negative way to dig a deep, dark black hole and said, right, I'm coming for you lot. And then as I started moving forward and life started getting that bit better, and I started enjoying things a bit more, I started letting go of things. I started dealing with the traumas. I started getting fitter, started doing nice things, more experiences. That need and want to hurt these people that had hurt me was diminishing. And then eventually I let go of the business. I let go of the hate of these people. I then began to understand them. And I can call the guy a narcissist, but now I understand where it's coming from because of what happened to him. So although I still do videos and say the narcissist, if somebody asks a question, I'll say, no, but now I understand. That venom isn't there anymore, because that's just investing it into this guy. And what do you want to do that for? What you want to do is you want to take all that energy and put it in where you are going.
Yeah.
And
really,
you see massive changes in your life.
Yes.
Which is motivation like you've never seen before.
So much. And I think that goes for all experiences and relationships where you might want to get closure, is you've got to shift that energy from the negative aspect to the positive aspect. You've got to realize how much energy you're actually putting into that negative. You know, every thought, every word, every action, every bad day, every lost moment, is creating more negative energy that you could be putting into the positive there. Anna, and then I'll go back to Jason, if that's all right.
I have a closing.
I wanted to mention all of this is really wonderful, what we're saying, except that a lot of people, I'd say most people who are going through a hard time, not just putting closure to their past, but actually understanding and integrating what happened to them, are not in a place emotionally to actually do it until they can calm down their system. I know this from experience because that's who I was. I was this person who would get so emotionally activated because I didn't really understand how to process emotions. This is one aspect of trauma, is that you get completely dysregulated. You do not learn how to manage the energy that's created in your body and in your mind, because that's what emotions are. It's energy, emotion, and it gets activated and you don't know how to calm it down. You don't know how to process it. So it is really important to do that, to learn how to regulate your own emotions. Children need other people to do it with them. They need co-regulation. We do too as adults. This is why we have friends. This is why we have mentors. This is why we have coaches. We need to learn to regulate our emotional system. For me, besides having coaches and teachers and friends that help me with that, for me, certain things really help me. One of them is to go to the water. I need to go to the ocean. It really calms me down. And I've come to understand that there's a reason for this. And it's chemistry. It's science. We are, I think, almost 80% water. We come from water. We need water to help our bodies function right, help our bodies release the toxins that are produced by intense emotions, meditation. All of that really helps us regulate our system. And until we can do that, until we can actually understand and harness and manage our emotional system, none of these other aspects of closure are going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even if you are suffering from in some way or another, you've got to find a way to start to change that chemical balance through some kind of exercise, movement, diet, more sleep, more sun, getting in water, whatever it is, it really helps shift the fog, the mental fog. So Jason, I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah, I mean, all those points, totally agree, because when I came out of hospital, I was unable to walk unaided. So of course I think I'm fortunate really, because I've got a really good starting point. I've got a walk. So we are really, really fortunate where we live, because we have mountains and we have the sea and we have rivers and waterfalls. We've got it all within a close proximity. So I live right by the sea. So I listen to the waves a lot now, which I neglected for years. But I spent a lot of time walking in these areas that Anna mentions. But also then I learned something which I didn't know how to do at 40 plus years of age, was how to deal with my emotions. And I don't say I wish I'd had somebody to talk to, because I didn't trust anyone. It would have been a lot quicker a process and more manageable if I'd had somebody to talk to that understood it. I now understand that, but I just couldn't allow anybody in. I was so damaged. It took me a long time to actually say, okay, I need a little bit of help. I need to check this out. And it was a longer process for that, definitely. Yeah. But all the other things, I mean, tree-lined avenues, forestry, all water, amazing places. It just calms you down naturally.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
An amazing thing.
Yeah, and I think accepting it's okay to have emotions and allowing those emotions to flow is really, really crucial. Get it out. Don't bottle it up. I think when I had depression when I was younger, and I chose to ignore all negative emotions for a few years and only focus on the positive, and it helped. But then for a while, the negative ones were building up. Because I wasn't allowing myself to experience them when they were naturally there, so to speak. So, Gabe, did you want to add something? Or...
Yeah, again, so much resonates here with me. It's all about the science and the spirituality behind it for me. And as Jason is speaking, I'm thinking his words were telling me that the decision that he made, the energetic amplitude of that decision was greater than how he felt. And because that energy was greater, okay, there was a shift. And that's exactly what it takes for people, to be able to make that inspired commitment and say, I want to shift. And like Anna was saying, the emotional energy management, that is so important, because our emotions are our GPS guidance through life. And if we allow our emotions to guide us towards a rabbit hole with down spiraling emotions, we are just self-prophesizing that devastation in our future, but by shifting it, by managing it, subtly, because every emotion, as energetic that they each come at a specific degree or specific frequency. So you can't jump from depression to happiness just because we're trying to save a life. You got to be able to subtly go from depression to sorrow, from sorrow to sadness, from sadness maybe to resentment, and keep elevating it. And as you release each layer of downregulated emotions, you're filling your heart with more energy that it swells up. Now it wants to get a better taste of feeling good. And that is part of the mental rehearsal that we're learning to do. Letting go is part of that. Releasing that energy so we can raise our vibrations is part of that emotional energy management that Anna's talking about. And that's so important for people to learn. And it's very simple. Our body is made up of meridian points, acupressure points. So our central nervous system, which is our complete electrical system, needs to be stimulated. It needs to flow. And that flow is what really just makes the difference in one's perception, beliefs, okay? When our energy shift, our beliefs, our paradigms, everything shifts as long as we are guiding that energy towards that breakthrough, that better outcome. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's a really good thing that you can actually do is tapping. Yeah, if you don't have access to nature or getting out and all those things is difficult, it's something very easy to learn. There's lots of information on the internet. Specifically, people that are watching this show, if you find Gabe on Facebook, Gabe Riviera, he's actually got a free 90-minute session happening for some people this month. And so talk to Gabe and he may be able to get you on this journey much quicker. So yeah, Joey.
I have to say that I'm so pleasantly I'm just so grateful to be part of this conversation and everybody here. And it's so nice for me to be able to get just swept up and lost and present in the conversation, so that my head forgets the thing that I wanted to say. Because everybody's saying a lot of what I would want to say anyway, which is also beautiful for me to experience. Anyway, what I wanted to say, I think, was back to the idea of emotional regulation. It's sort of like the chicken and the egg, right? It's like, if we tell people also that, you know, oh, they're going to be able to create this closure once they have this emotional regulation, or the opposite, you know, you're going to have the emotional regulation when you can make the distinctive, energetic closure that opens up that possibility, right? It's like everybody is going to have their own journey towards this place that we've gotten to, right? And some of us are going to learn the emotional regulation tools, and that's going to give us the space to finally believe that we can put an ending to something. And some of us are going to figure out that we could put an ending to something that was not working, and then we're going to find all the tools that we need in the new way that we're walking into. But there isn't a one way. There isn't a one way, as I think what I wanted to say. And I love that every single story is going to have all these similar steps, but in just different, you know, different places, right? You stepped onto this because they are all connected, right? And it doesn't matter your entry point into this healing process, whether it be through a tragedy or a meditation class or meeting someone who, you know, is a spiritual advisor, or however you step in, you know, it's just about making that first step. Because once you're in it, all these things open up to you. The tools, the people, the networking, the healing, the nature, the resolution, the service, it all comes with this journey of healing. And it doesn't matter how you get into the journey. Just if you see it and you feel like that's the journey I want to be on, just say yes to something and start, right?
Yeah, I think that's the crucial thing, is you have to start. And one of the things you have to really do, from my perspective, is not have too many expectations of how quickly things are going to happen. Because, you know, everybody's journey is different, like Joe's just said. You know, everybody's going to need different things, and so you might be trying one thing and you might have to try something else, but it's worth it. I mean, for all of us who have slowly, or pretty much, for personally, I'd say, as far as I can tell at the moment, I've tied up everything that used to bother me in my past. But again, you know, these things pop up when we don't expect them, and the first thing I'll do is look at how I can close them energetically and go, right, you know, what do I need to embody from that to accept that, to move forward with that? Sil, you wanted to add something?
Well, I just add to you quickly here what you just said about pacing. For me, I don't think it matters when we learn from the universe's point of view. What matters is that we do learn. Doesn't matter when, now, later, doesn't matter. But what I did want to add is, and I see this regularly with people that I work with, when we face and deal with the awful truth, or an awful truth, when we face and deal with it, inevitably it transforms into an awesome truth. And that's when we get resolution, closure, or acceptance. When we faced and dealt with those awful truths and transformed it into awesome truth. Very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you just said there, I'd just like to add that when we will learn, we have to learn. That's what we're here to do, you know? So, you know, you might as well put it into action and start doing it, because that is what you're here to do. This is the life you've chosen to come down and experience. And so if you can choose to learn now, or you can choose to learn in 20 years' time. But if you don't learn in 20 years. If you choose to wait for 20 years, you're going to keep going through the pain. You're going to keep going through the experience for another 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
don't really have a choice to learn, but our choice is whether you're going to learn the hard way or the easy way. That's up to you. You're going to learn either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on that note, we're on 90 minutes now. Does anybody want to add anything else? Or no, I'm going to wrap up today's show. So thank you all, everybody in the audience and everybody here with me. It's been a really awesome show. So I'd just like to wrap up with some points from the show. So closing is a beginning and an end. It's not, and it's ending an unhelpful perspective and obtaining a new one. It's understanding things, making sense, accepting and allowing things. It's not leaving things behind. It's just the transition to a new perspective. Rewriting the stories we tell ourselves, not just accepting them as we were told they were or as we've been thinking they were for a long time. It's the belief that we can move forward. It's to resolve it and evolve from it. We need to revision things, process things, find a resolution with things and make peace with them and ourselves. So move through what was and moving on to the next, forgiving yourself and others, releasing regret, guilt, shame, or any other pain that you're holding on to, and introducing positive things like compassion, love, trust, excitement, and joy. And as Gabe would say, start a healing event. Don't be afraid to let go. Believe in the possibility of something better laying on the other side. Embrace where you are. Do what you can to raise your vibration. And remember that every day is a new day. Just believe that you can do whatever you want to do. Learn something new and try it, and starting every day. So next week, we will be talking about emotional energy, which we have touched on today. And I think it's going to be a really interesting show. And if for anyone that's on my profile, I'll also be talking with Vina, who's normally here with us on Monday. And we're going to be talking about receptivity, perspective, love letters from the universe, philosophy, astrology, and many other things. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. You're all amazing. And thank you, everybody who's watching as well. Look forward to seeing you next Thursday, same time, or Monday if you're around as well for Food for Thought.